Going forward, let's forever mark this day, July 4th, 2021, but each and every July 4th going forward as the day that this long national nightmare came to an end. We are much waiting with bated breath, all of us as college football observers, for the decision made by one JT Tuimoloau, or affectionately known as JTT, especially to, in the next few minutes, either Ohio State, Oregon, USC, or Washington fans. Welcome to the Voice of College Football here at MarkRogersTV. Thank you so much for joining us on this late edition of a live stream based on the big news that is coming down at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific Time, and the time zone that is most important will depend on one JTT's decision to whether to play this fall for the Buckeyes, the Ducks, the Huskies, or the Trojans. And we will take your calls momentarily and, of course, watch the decision all together. So I will let you know, here's my situation, is that I was traveling for about 20 hours as of just a few hours ago. So I've been on the road, have not been abreast of too much college football news, although I have certainly kept the laptop and the phone handy to stay in touch and continue to work on the channel, as you have seen over the past several days. Although, again, this is the first time I've joined all of you for, let's see, going back to Monday night. So it's been almost a full week since we've been able to talk college football with all of you live here at the Voice of College Football. We are simulcasting. Hopefully, this is the first time I've attempted this. Simulcasting both from the main channel, Ohio State and Oregon channels. Sorry, Husky fans, we do not have a Washington channel. And sorry, USC fans, we've got a USC channel, but not as of yet able to go live there. So we shall see how this all plays out. I will say that after traveling for 20 hours and arriving back here at home about 10 o'clock this morning, that I was able to catch a couple hours sleep. I set my alarm for a business phone call that I had, a couple that I had slated for this afternoon, and it was just maybe 25 minutes ago that I found out, thank you, SD1 Sports, I found out that JTT is making his announcement today at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I saw CBS Sportsnet, so I don't know if that was going to be on the cable station or just online. I did not necessarily want to check out the latest Formula One race. So that's what I've got on CBS Sportsnet right now. It's probably just online, but just in case, I've got CBS Sportsnet lined up here on the TV screen, and we will track JTT's decision with you. So if you could let me know if you have information regarding the source, in addition to CBS Sportsnet online, if they're actually broadcasting this live a la ESPN on National Signing Day. And if, of course, for those joining us who saw my diatribe off the top, tongue in cheek, this will forever be July 4th, going back to 1776. Happy birthday, America. Happy birthday to all of us, patriots, Americans, true red-blooded, red, white, and blue Americans who love this country. Happy July 4th to all of you. And this, of course, is the day to honor our great country and all the people that have sacrificed down through the many years, pushing 250 years, coming up on 250. The big 250 will be on July 4, 2026. So happy birthday to our amazing country and the greatness that we've enjoyed in the past, certainly. And again, the JTT remarks off the top, a little blasphemy, tongue in cheek. This is always red, white, and blue day for me and all of us patriots. I will get to your comments in the live chat. The phone lines are open as well at 860-499-3332. Before I get the phone line to the ticker down below, of course, I'm going to remind everyone to shop Amazon using the link in the description section of all the videos. So if you shop Amazon, and 160 million Americans do each month, that number continues to blow me away. Then when you shop Amazon, please use the link that we provide in the description section of the videos for your shopping experience that is exactly the same. No additional pennies to spend, no additional hoops to jump through, same shopping experience using Amazon right there. And it appears as though the Formula One session here is much more important than JTT. And therefore, CBS Sportsnet not broadcasting the decision here, at least based on what I'm seeing. I'll go online. I can track it with all of you. Please keep me informed in regards to what's going on with that. And I'll get to your comments in just a second. And I will certainly take calls. There's so much to talk about concerning college football right now, even outside the regular roster breakdowns that we've been providing each day. And we've got so many more to bring you. Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State is coming soon, and others. But with the recent NIL breakthrough, name, image, and likeness on July 1st, we've got much to talk about there. Unfortunate news recently concerning former Miami and Georgia head coach Mark Richt, I would like to address, and some other items as well, as players continue to commit to schools each and every day, and the transfer portal is still humming despite the July 1st cutoff. I don't believe I've ever visited CBS Sportsnet in my life. Let's see here. CBSSportsnet.com? I don't know. CBS Sports? Here we go. And of course, as we all watch this together, I'm sure they're going to make a bit of a TV show out of it. I just clicked on this. Why can I not watch this? I'm sure they've made a TV spectacle out of this, and they're not just going to announce at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central, or 1 p.m. Pacific, which of course could be the crucial time for JTT's career. Why can I not watch this? Give it to me. Okay, where can I watch it live? I've got the article up here on CBS Sports that tells me I can watch it live. You would think that they would provide a link. Okay, the video at the top of this page, which does not exist. So CBS Sports is telling me that the video will appear at the top of the page that I'm watching, but that does not exist currently. Okay, I'll see what you guys have, and we'll go from there. And I'm sure somebody will let me know when JTT makes his decision known. We should have taken a vote on this. Ohio State has been in the driver's seat. I believe that they have established the relationship based on the sources that we have, and we talked to Oregon people, Ohio State people, used to talk to Washington people, have lost those connections to a certain extent, and USC people. And it seems as though USC has made the mad dash recently and made some inroads. JTT had positive things to say about Jimmy Lake, Washington head coach, here in the last few days. And of course, the Ohio State relationship goes back a long ways. And JTT dropped Alabama about a week to 10 days ago. All right. Anthony Williams telling me, Mark, if you score this up, it will be a stain on you. Jumped out of the shower, got the clean shirt on, no stains on me, Anthony. All right, where goes one? We have the best defensive coaches in college football. I don't know who we are. Got Raheem. It's loading on the sports app HQ. It's not coming on. Yeah, that's kind of what I figured. JTT going to the West Coast. So I will depend on all of you because it's not coming up for me. And I will rely on everyone here. So I'm going to go to the bottom of the comments here. Okay. Looks like we've got a. All right. Okay. Thank you so much for that, Mecca. Appreciate you jumping on here to let us know that JTT is a Buckeye. The information that I had received was that he was going to make his announcement at 4 p.m. Eastern time, and that's why I made the live stream for 4. Plus, I didn't find out until about 3:40. All right. Good stuff. Thank you. Ohio State is the winner, as we mostly expected. Good stuff. David, my issue. As many people, David, we all have issues in life. So maybe count your blessings that you don't have any issues. All right. The phone lines are open at 860-499-3332. And we'll go from there. As you guys know what the deal is here. Sometimes we throw together live streams at the last second because we respond to breaking news. Therefore, we don't have everything set up and aren't fully informed at the time. So check Mark Richt's retirement. Check Willie Taggart's firing. Mark D'Antonio's stepping down. I could go on and on and on. Breaking news right here at the Voice of College Football. We will come on live even if we don't have all the information, because that's why we have a conversation with you. And that's why you have a voice as well. All right. And I will get through the comments. And again, I will take your calls at 860-499-3332. Hopefully the line did not drop. Because I got to say, it is great to be on here. It seems like it's been forever since I've done a live stream. It's been forever since I've done a call-in show. It's been about a week and a half, and that might be a record since the last time we did a call-in show. And the last time we did a live stream was we did a series of live streams on Monday, as we are the king of live streams here. We keep it going all the time. All right. Let's check out everybody's thoughts. Obviously, this is a big win for Ohio State. They hope to get a couple of years out of JTT and Jack Sawyer together as possibly the best duo you could imagine. Potentially, it's all potential right now. We've seen a litany of five-star prospects that have not come through. D-Rock Irish, good to see you. Yes, we will be tracking the commits throughout the day and tomorrow, and we will post videos on all our team channels of the major commits. When these commitments started to come down at the 1st of June, I was posting commitment videos across the board regardless of the player, and obviously many of them didn't receive the views, and so we will stick to the major players here. We got web security on the line. Web security, how can Clemson and Bama compete with this Ohio State class? Yeah, I love the optimism. But as much as it's directed toward Alabama, that's a direction you don't want to go. Ohio State has jumped out into the lead the last few years under Ryan Day and Urban Meyer. Before that, with the #1 recruiting class in the country through the summer months into the fall. And then Alabama seems to steamroll ahead and keep it going and then pluck away just every potential top 50 to 100 player on the board the last few days prior to signing period and jump out of nowhere to become the #1 class again, as they have been 9 of the last 11 years. But it's a tremendous class. Whether you've got the #1 rated class, #2, #3, #4, as long as you're in the range, you're bringing in that type of talent and you know how to coach and develop and prepare for the games, then you have a shot to win national championships. And that's where Ohio State is firmly entrenched. But a great win for the Buckeyes. They had put in, based on outside perspective, it appeared as though Ohio State for the longest term put in the most work in building a relationship with JTT. And we can only gather based on his conversations, based on what he has stated publicly, what it came down to. I got to think that it came down to Ohio State name, brand, image, the massive size and commitment to the program in regards to winning championships, coupled with the relationship building. Alabama swept in late. Of course, Alabama's been winning the most championships, but the combination of the relationship building and the brand and the winning tradition and the resources of the program certainly weighed in Ohio State's favor well over Oregon and Washington. Despite what Mario Cristobal is building at Oregon, it's still relative to what we see in the Pac-12. It's been the best recruiting class now going on a third consecutive cycle for Cristobal at Oregon versus the Pac-12, but it's still relative to the Pac-12. So a top 5 to 10 recruiting class at Oregon, not necessarily comparing yet at this stage to Ohio State's recruiting classes. There is still a cut above at Ohio State, well above Oregon, decidedly above Oregon. I'm not going to say well above, decidedly would be the best way to phrase Ohio State's recruiting take right now, above what we see at Oregon. Now, USC made some inroads late. Washington was, of course, the home state school, and I'm sure that there was a certain draw there. But I believe Ohio State benefited from the early start, the recent success, the national branding and image, and the Pac-12 obviously suffering from an image problem itself that's been based partially on perception, but partially based on the results on the field. The Pac-12 is certainly just not grabbing national attention right now. And it's going to be up to Oregon/USC to bring that back. So I think all that had to do with what went into the decision. And it was brought up to the live chat a number of times by a number of you, Larry Johnson, and his ability to develop players and his reputation for molding even great talent into greater technicians on the field as defensive linemen, both interior, but mostly exterior on the edge. The Bosa brothers, Chase Young in particular, those three moving on to the NFL and dominating even at the next level. When you look at Joey Bosa, NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year, Nick Bosa, what he's accomplished now with San Francisco, and now Chase Young. I don't know, did not keep track of the NFL awards this past season, but I wouldn't be surprised if Chase Young was the NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. That certainly is a recruiting tool, a recruiting discussion that is brought to the table by Ryan Day and Larry Johnson to say, you could be this guy. We play in bigger games on a bigger stage. We have shown year after year that we will compete for national championships. Oregon, Washington, they have the potential to do that. They're being largely ignored in the Pac-12. People don't watch those games near as much as they watch our games. more people are going to be watching. So your collegiate football experience here is going to be greater, more enhanced, more publicized. Now, that doesn't help a JTT for the NFL draft. The NFL is watching the games all over. So he could have gone to Fresno State and prepared himself for the NFL from the standpoint of just playing games and developing his skills under decent coaching. But in terms of the collegiate football experience of playing for championships, having eyeballs on you, and lest we bring it up, name, image, and likeness. If you look at the top 10 to 20 television rated games each college football season, the top 10, year after year after year after year, have all been, except for one or two one-offs, every so often, basically the top 10 in the nation, the most highly watched college football games all come out of the SEC and the Big Ten. And the ones that come out of the Big Ten are almost always, the rare exception would be a decent Michigan-Penn State game. All Ohio State related. Ohio State, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, a Big Ten championship game, Ohio State, Wisconsin. More people watch Ohio State football by far, and it gains so much more attention than Washington, Oregon. Move that into the new world. The New World Order, NIL, name, image, and likeness. That could have been a huge selling point for Ohio State over Washington and Oregon. Come here. We are in the conversation constantly. The numbers go up when Ohio State's on television. That can translate into more money. Yes, JTT could go to Oregon, USC, Washington. Huge football programs, national reputations to a certain extent, but not to the degree of Ohio State. Look at this. Who's dropping by to talk some college football with us? Tony Gerdeman, Buckeye Scoop. Tony, good to see you, man.
Hey, what's going on?
I've been checking out this commitment list, and I was just a bit intrigued by one that was mentioned here in the last few minutes. This JTT guy seemed to have made a decision that caught a few people's attention, especially in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, Columbus, Ohio loves their college football, and they love their 5-star defensive ends, and they got another one today in JT Tuimoloau, and there may have been some Buckeye fans who were upset about having to wait, or were upset while they're waiting. I don't think they're upset any longer about waiting.
Yeah, so the way I framed it, and then we'll get the deep dive with you, was that Ohio State has been the front runner since pretty much day one. And so in addition to all the advantages brought to the table by an Ohio State, which can't be matched by anybody outside of Alabama and Clemson, you have the relationship building. So that was obviously an unbeatable combination. USC made a late push. Washington's the hometown school. Oregon's been recruiting out of its mind compared to the rest of the Pac-12. And then the other portion I just hit me a few minutes ago was, for as much attention as USC, Washington, Oregon get as somewhat national brands, now that NIL's in the picture, Ohio State's just a much greater opportunity there as well.
Well, and we've seen it from recruits who have started taking their visits, that they come into Columbus thinking one thing, and then they get here and they see it's a completely different city than what they expected. I think maybe they were expecting, just complete farmland, and we've got that. But there's also a city outside of the campus that's just a couple miles away from campus. So now, maybe before, when players and prospective players looked at Columbus and Ohio State, you're looking like, what kind of fun can I have there? What kind of nightlife? Now there's a business aspect of it as well. Like, yes, I want to play high level football, but what else is there in terms of businesses? And, how can I make a larger name for myself? And, Columbus has it. I was pretty surprised that there was no NIL stuff today for JT Tuimoloau. There are no sponsorships. And I thought it was interesting that even though he didn't, CBS HQ still decided, well, let's get some commercial breaks in here, and then we'll get to the commitment. So even though he didn't take advantage of his opportunity to add some sponsorship dollars, CBS sure did.
It is funny, Tony, because I grew up in Ohio like you did. Lived there until I was 23 years old. I never realized, of course, I knew Ohio and even the large metropolitan areas, Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati, weren't New York or Los Angeles. But I didn't realize what the perception was now that I've lived on the East Coast for 20 years of what Ohio is. Like, I live in more woods and farmland in Connecticut, which the selling point is we're 2 hours from Boston. We're 2 hours from New York. We're on the East Coast. We're where it's at. But lo and behold, I tell people all the time, go to Ohio. There's a reason there are 5 professional sports teams in Ohio. Where there's professional sports teams, there are people, meaning there's retail, there's money, there's action.
It's funny that you mentioned that. When I went to Ohio State in the 90s, one of my best friends was from Boston, and he was, an Ohio State student. His grandparents, they hear Ohio, they thought he was in Idaho. There's like no difference between Ohio and Idaho for people from Boston. And they have no idea, no accurate picture of what Columbus is like. And yeah, you go, 5 minutes out of town and you can find all of the farmland you want. But if you're looking for stuff to do, that's also here in Columbus as well. And the ever growing suburbs, which will eventually encompass all of Ohio, I think.
We got serious here today. We brought in the heavy hitter, Steve Hellwagon, joining us from Bucknuts 247 Sports. I want to remind everyone that we talk Ohio State football with these two and Kevin Noon each and every week, typically on Wednesday, but you got to subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications on the Ohio State channel to know that we are live with these guys each and every week. So I appreciate Tony and Steve jumping on here. I threw out a link. I knew that they would be running around with their obligations for Buckeye Scoop and for Bucknuts, doing what they need to do. So I just said, hey, I'm going live. I found out about this at like 3:40. I was traveling for 20 hours coming back from Houston and was in an airport all night and just found out about this after catching like 3 hours of sleep. So I thought, hey, we go live. And man, I luck out with these two joining us. Steve, how's it going today?
I'm doing good. What was interesting for me was I was following a Reds-Cubs game all day, it seemed like, and the Reds finally took the lead 3-2 and held on, got a double play to end the game, and the ball was in the first baseman's mitt right as JT Tuimoloau made the announcement that Ohio State. So I had on one screen I had that, on the other screen I had the other. So it was almost simultaneous that they happened at the exact same time, and that's what you like to see and hear a lot of times. So, any rate, what a day for Ohio State, July the 4th, 2021. I think a lot of us will remember where we were and what we were doing when this happened. And a couple things I think about. My job on this instance was not really to cover the announcement because we had, Brandon Huffman, Steve Wiltfong, Bill Kurlick, everybody else writing all those kind of breaking news things. I did a couple of featurey things to kind of go along and kind of paint the bigger picture. And one of them was about Larry Johnson. And I don't think you can give Larry Johnson, he is worth his weight in gold for Ohio State. And as I did the research on the story, this kid, JT Tuimoloau, becomes the 13th national top 100 defensive lineman that Larry Johnson has signed for Ohio State in 8 years. From the 2014 class, he arrived in January 2014 through 2021. He is in that 8 years of recruiting classes. This is the 13th guy who's a national top 100 defensive lineman that Larry Johnson has signed. And, of course, 2 in this class with Jack Sawyer, the number 4 overall player, JT Tuimoloau, the number 3 overall player. And moreover, you look at what he's done in 25 years between Penn State and Ohio State. He's had 16 guys named as the Big Ten Defensive Lineman of the Year. 16 guys. And that goes all the way back, to Tamba Hawley and all those guys at Penn State. Then Bosa, Young, blah, blah, blah. Taekwon Lewis was in that group. So this guy has done some amazing, amazing things. Steve Wilfong today called him one of the best defensive line coaches in the history of college football. And I think that says a lot right there. When we were talking to him, he is worth his weight in gold, in my opinion, as a recruiter and as a developer of talent. Other thing that I did was a look at national top 10 players who've signed with Ohio State in the last 20 years. And this goes back, what would that be, to 2003, maybe 2002, something like that. Well, I included Ewers next year, so it begins in 2003. So 2003 to 2022, those 20 classes, he is, I think, the 14th national top 10 guy. And guys, what's interesting, of the people who've completed their eligibility at Ohio State, almost all of them were first-round NFL draft picks and or have been major success stories in the National Football League. And so if you give the guys who assign the rankings credit, they've had the right guys pegged in the top 10, and they typically pan out. Even Noah Spence was one of those guys years ago at OSU, and although it didn't work for him at Ohio State, he's in his 4th or 5th year in the NFL right now, so it's worked out for him. So a lot of guys on that list as well. I think Nick Bosa may have been on that list, and just a bunch of other guys, obviously, but a lot of guys he'll be playing with at Ohio State, like Jack Sawyer and Paris Johnson, Nicholas Petit-Ferrer, and a number of other guys that were national top 10 players who panned out, and going way back, Ted Ginn Jr. and Terrell Pryor, and you get the idea, just the creme de la creme. And of course, Quinn Ewers next year, number 1, the only number 1 guy that I can remember them having, although Pryor was considered number 1 by some, maybe some services. So just some historical kind of, content that go in to what today really means, and what it's going to mean for Ohio State, as he said, for the next 3 or 4 years.
Well, you mentioned
probably 3.
Larry Johnson with the top 100 guys. That doesn't even count, as you mentioned, Tyquan Lewis, who was Defensive Lineman of the Year. Devon Hamilton was turned into like the number 950th ranked recruit to a 3rd-round pick. Sam Hubbard was a safety in high school, and then a linebacker, and then a tight end, and then a defensive end at Ohio State, and then became a 2nd or 3rd round draft pick. And so it's the perfect storm of recruiting ability and developmental ability. And some guys do one thing really well, and other guys do the other thing really well. Ohio State has one of the best ever that does both well. And they have another one, I think, in Brian Hartline as well, a much younger version of Larry Johnson, if you will. But, yeah, just the ability to not only recruit the player, recruit the family, everybody feels comfortable with him, and then just the amount of detail. When you listen to him talk about his players and their development, and also listen to the players talk about being developed by him, we're talking stuff like you need to get your right heel a 1/4 inch more to the left when you take off, and then you need to be just a little bit lower, and don't be so upright. And he watches video film constantly and looks for all of these little things that he calls things that he can put into a player's toolbox, and he wants to whether it's hand fighting, swim moves, everything he can. It's just a 4-year process, 5-year process, 3-year process of filling the toolbox with as much as he can, and then putting players in positions to succeed, and then eventually just throwing them out there for 1st down, 2nd down, 3rd down, and just go at it. And it's been incredible to watch, and it was a no-brainer hire by Urban Meyer way back in the day when Mike Vrabel left, and there was a need, and
that was it.
It was the perfect timing.
You guys expanded on a point that I was making right when I brought Tony on, in terms of this kid's so talented that as long as he gets decent coaching, he could go anywhere in the country and be an NFL player in 3 to 4 years. But when Larry Johnson and the Ohio State program can first and foremost, as we discussed, Tony, say, you're going to be playing, first of all, let's address the collegiate experience. Yes, Oregon may do this. USC may do that. Washington may do. We've proven we're going to be there all the time. The eyeballs in the Pac-12 are minuscule compared to the eyeballs when you look at the top 10 rated games in college football each year. It's all SEC, it's all Ohio State. Those are the top 10 rated games in college football. Extend that to NIL and what the potential is there. And then on top of that, what again Steve took the deep dive on was Larry Johnson and Ryan Day can say, yeah, you're going to be an NFL player. You're a great talent. You'll get good coaching anywhere. But Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa, Chase Young, they are stars. They are NFL Defensive Players of the Year, Rookies of the Year, 3 in about 6 years. It's just the development with all the resources put together is just almost unbeatable.
Well, Ohio State has this thing that they call a theory versus testimony. Ohio State, when it comes to defensive line, is the testimony. Everybody else is the theory. Like Oregon, they say they can do this. That's, but Ohio State has shown that they can do it. And so there is testimony to what Ohio State is telling JTT and other recruits. And, you don't have to look hard to see all of the results from Ohio State defensive linemen in the league and in their bank accounts and all of that. And there's, everybody else has to try to piece together the kind of salesmanship or the sales job that Ohio State can just be like, just go look. I mean, we don't even have to do anything. It's easy. Everybody already knows the kind of production that Ohio State has put into the defensive line. And then, of course, then Ohio State isn't going to just let them go look. They're going to put it all in front of the family and the player. And at that point, you have to look for other reasons to not go to Ohio State. You have to look for reasons to go away from Ohio State because there's so much there for a defensive end to like.
Parker's, Steve, he might be muted there.
Yeah, he had 5 guys in one season in the 2018 draft that went on to the NFL, including Tyquan Lewis, Sam Hubbard, and Jalen Holmes. And 4 of his guys have been academic All-Americans, 13 first-team All-Americans between Ohio State and Penn State. So 13 in almost 25 years. I think he's coming up on his 24th year at this level. So just uncanny what he's been able to do so far and what is still out there for him in the years to come.
Yeah, so the former JTT update that we would do each week, I don't think that comes to an end. It just transitions to what did he have to eat, what was for breakfast on Thursday, all those sorts of things.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of hullabaloo surrounding him, and he's going to be a late arrival at Ohio State, obviously coming in about 4 weeks before the start of preseason camp. It's going to be a crash course on him on the culture at Ohio State. No, we don't grab that door handle with our right hand, we grab it with our left hand. And I mean, it's going to be a culture shock, I think, for him to be indoctrinated in so many different and new ways of thinking and doing things. They taught you to do it that way in high school. Believe us when we tell you it's got to be done this way in college. And it could be a lift technique. It could be a pass rush technique. It could be throwing your towel into the bin the right way. I mean, it's going to be a crash course for him in how to play college football. And there's not much time to get him through it if you expect him to make any kind of an impact in the early season with the 2 of the bigger games of the year, Minnesota, the opener on the road, and back home with Oregon. Minnesota, you wouldn't say, it's not that big of a game, not that great of a team they're playing against, a 500 team maybe, but they've had better seasons in recent years than that. So it's on the road, new quarterback. So you're going to need all hands on deck, I think, to win that game. And his hands would definitely qualify in that regard. So I'm interested to see how quickly he can assimilate and how quickly he can push his way into the 2D. That's a big question. They've got some veterans with Tyler Friday, Javonte Jean-Baptiste kind of holding the spots right now, placeholders, some might think, behind the starters, Zach Harrison, Tyreek Smith. And then, of course, you have Jack Sawyer, who's there. Noah Potter, who's played a little bit at end, a little bit at tackle during the spring. How does he fit into this? So I'm interested to see in preseason camp how it all shakes out.
Appreciate Tony Gerdeman and Steve Hellwagon joining us for this. Is there some interest in JTT? Yeah, we got 366 folks on the line with no notifications, no warning, nothing. I just, bam, we're doing a live stream. Let's go. And because I didn't know about this until about 20 minutes before 4 Eastern, we're getting comments in the live chat about basketball, whether you guys know anything about that being a factor.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's Ohio State said he could play basketball. He's gotten basketball scholarship offers from other schools, and this happens every so often, but rarely does the player end up actually following through and playing multiple sports. But yeah, Ohio State has told him he can if he wants. And they've done it before in the past. Ricky Dudley, Nate Sally, where they would join the basketball team after the football season. And we'll see if he tries that his freshman year, and if that becomes it's a lot. Being a football player is a lot. That's a year-round thing with a couple of breaks here and there. Then you want to just go from football season to basketball season without getting that break after the bowl games or whatever. That's a tough gig. They give the players, I think, 3 or 4 weeks after the bowl game before they get right back into winter conditioning, and you'd get no break in there. So if he wants to try it, go for it. He's young, as far as I know, he's a teenager. So but I don't expect. Steve, do you ever expect him to shoot up? I put my over under on career basketball minutes for him at 0.5. Where are you going?
Yeah, I'm a little skeptical about it. As Tony said, one sport at this level is hard enough, and he missed out on spring ball this past year. If his ultimate goal is to be in the NFL and get drafted in 2024 after 3 years at Ohio State, I guess basketball wouldn't necessarily hurt that goal, particularly if he doesn't get injured or whatever. And maybe it would help him from a conditioning standpoint to be able to do all the running that's involved with playing basketball at that level. I mean, it's just a brutal sport for those guys, the 4 or 5 month grind that they go through and how hard they have to practice and how hard they have to prepare just to win games in the Big Ten. I think it would be fun for him to be able to do that. I know that he met with Chris Holtmann during his official visit, and I think Chris Holtmann is on board, because when you have an elite athlete like this and a guy that could come in and maybe steal a few minutes for you at a power forward position or whatever, I don't know that this is necessarily the year where you would see him play, because they've got Zed Key and they've got Joey Brunk and Kyle Young, and they've got guys, EJ Liddell as well. You've got 4 pretty good players there that you don't need to use a guy off the street, for lack of a better term. He doesn't count as a scholarship player for basketball, to my knowledge. I think he only counts scholarship in football. So there's really no charge for Chris Holtmann if he does get to use him. It's just I'm a little skeptical. It's a lot to ask of a young man to do it if he's willing to do it. The other thing is academically. One of the things they always talk about, with guys running track, is they got to be on top of their academics to be able to do that in the spring and take time away, which is normally a big academic semester for the football players, is the spring. So to me, I'm skeptical, but, this kid seems like he's a freak, and, I wouldn't put it past him necessarily. And, I think it'd be kind of cool. And again, you can't have enough people who are winners on your team, and this kid definitely seems like a winner to me.
NBA fan, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. Appreciate that. You as well, David Knight, Notre Dame fan, with a question here. With these great recruiting classes, it would seem Ohio State is stacked at every position. Let me ask, however, is there a position that you all worry about or feel is in need of bolstering, Steve?
I think linebacker. I think they need more. They need more playmakers. I mean, I think about some of the guys who've manned that position at Ohio State in recent years, like Jerome Baker and Raekwon McMillan, Ryan Shazier, obviously before he was injured with the Steelers. Going back even a few more years, just guys from the Tressel era who played linebacker at Ohio State, like Laurinaitis and Freeman. I don't see those guys walking through that door right now. And I think that there is some potential, with some of them, but I just don't see anybody who's necessarily an all Big Ten caliber guy. Now, they've got some guys coming like Hicks from down the Dayton area. He's going to be a high school senior, and Gabe Powers coming from Marysville. So maybe those guys can help bolster that position. Quarterback, you're set. Running back, you're set with Travion Henderson, Evan Pryor. Wide receiver, you're probably set, although your numbers are now down a little bit with some of the defections. Offensive line looks good. Defensive line obviously looks great. Corner, is there a Jeff Okuda in this group? Is there, a Denzel Ward? They have not recruited great players at cornerback until maybe this year, next year. They've got some national top 50, top 100 guys getting back into the fold. They went through about a 3-year lull there at cornerback where they didn't get a top 100 guy. So maybe that coincided with Combs not being on staff, but now that he's back, they seem like they're going to be recruiting pretty good. So those are the two big holes, and they're where you would expect on the defensive side of the football, where Ohio State was suspect last year and unproven this year. Linebacker and corner, to me, are the two big areas.
Yeah, in terms of recruiting, if that's what we're talking about, last year, or I guess since we're still talking about 2021, They signed one true linebacker in Reed Carrico, and then a second, Jalen Johnson, who's a safety linebacker, possible hybrid. So Steve's right. There's a concern there, but then that kind of gets filled with the CJ Hicks and Gabe Powers. Also, are they no longer playing three linebackers? And so if they are no longer playing three linebackers, you don't need as many linebackers. Corner, it sure seems like they've addressed it with Jordan Hancock and Ja'Kalen Johnson and Denzel Burke in 2021. They've got 3 guys in 2022 committed, including number 1, Jaheim Singletary. Now, there's all kinds of chatter about who's going to stick around in 2022 in that class. There are rumors about every single cornerback commit that Ohio State has about them going somewhere else. So what they have today may not be what they have tomorrow. But they've certainly addressed it, and they've got a number of guys. Safety is – they liked what they got with Jansen Dunn and Andre Turntine in 2021. They're in line to get 2 really good ones, and Xavier Nwampa and another guy that I'm completely whiffing on right now that is a top guy at IMG, I believe. So they're going to get some high 4-star types in 2022 if the things that are going in the direction continue to go in that direction. So there's – when I look at all of this, and as I've read that question, I'm thinking about the biggest concern I have is who is left tackle in 2023. And if that's the biggest concern right now, then things are going pretty good. But you still have to figure out who's going to be that left tackle in 2023, assuming Paris Johnson is, gone at that point.
Ant Ball, I get it at a place like Ohio State, and there's only a few in the nation like this. It's national championship or bust, and they haven't won one in 7 years. Okay. They just made the national championship game. They are winning everything but that. And again, if you are looking at that in context, Alabama's done something that's been unprecedented under Nick Saban. They're winning their fair share and getting to their fair share. When I say fair share, I mean amongst like 3, their fair share of playoffs and national championship games, and completely dominating what is pretty much without argument the second best conference in the nation. So I get it. It's the gold medal mentality, and that is the standard. That is the goal each and every year. But let's understand, they're winning just about everything.
Yeah, and this is what's interesting. Ohio State's won 2 national championships now in 53 years. I was born in 1968, so I know that number by heart. 53 years. You're
going to make some people mad about 1970, Steve.
Well,
I get those 1970 comments all the time.
Jim Plunkett took care of that. But 2002 and 2014 are the only national championships Ohio State's won in the last 53 years, and the program is still considered elite upon elite. So it's top 3 right now with Clemson, Alabama, and Ohio State, no question. And you've got Georgia, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, USC, a couple others trying to, punch their way up there to get into the elite spot. Oregon in particular, coming off the season they had, is got some aspirations this year if they can beat Ohio State. So at any rate, I am of a belief that you can't win the playoff unless you're in the playoff, and you just have to keep getting into the playoff to have a chance to win the playoff. So as long as they keep winning the Big Ten and keep getting in the playoff, their year's going to come one of these times. The breaks are going to fall their way, as they did in 2014, and that's how it is.
I just wonder, what is the qualification for what does something mean, and then how long does something last? Does something go away after 4 years, after 3, after 2 years? How long does that last, Mark?
Oh, we have those debates here every week, depending on the fan base.
Are you still elite? Yeah.
For Florida State, 2013 still relevant because 2013 was when they won the national championship. So they can laugh at the Miami fans that didn't win it. Of course, have not since 2001. But 8 years ago that's still within a respectable time frame.
For them, it may as well be 80 years. As bad. I mean, they've had some really bad games in the last 8 years.
The program is so different than it was in 2013 that it feels like a different era, even though it was 1 year earlier than Ohio State's last one.
Within context. That's the term I love to use a lot, within context. The Ohio State football program is, even with a different man in charge, pretty much the same football program it was in 2013, 2014. Florida State's miles different. Their guy is in College Station, Texas. We talk Ohio State football here all the time with these guys and others, but primarily these two. Kevin Noon here on our live show each and every week. Got over 400 people on the line here to talk Ohio State football, so this is good stuff. As of course, JT Tuimoloau has decided to play football at Ohio State. So this, in addition to just sheer explosiveness, athleticism, what do the scouts, what do the coaches say about Tony, this guy being next level elite?
Well, we were talking about his ability to play basketball. That's something that all coaches like out of their linemen, defensive linemen or offensive linemen. They watch those feet, and he has that. He's got size. I've seen some people compare him to former Buckeye Cameron Hayward, who was 6'5", 6'6", and 280 pounds, but able to move and play that defensive end spot. And so you've got that kind of athletic ability, the size. He plays tight end very well as well. And then you combine him, you put him on a defensive line with future NFLers, and you can't just worry about him. And you put him on a line opposite Jack Sawyer, who is one of the other top 2 or 3 defensive ends in the nation. And now you've got two guys as bookends who are going to be playing together for at least 3 years and growing together and feeding off of each other. And so it's just another one where you just add another one in and you build on it. And he brings size, speed, athleticism, strength, coachability, I think, is a big one that Larry Johnson will get to work on. And that's where I wonder, does the basketball go away once he finds out how far he still has to go to become the player that he should be? And that's where Larry Johnson breaks everything down. And it's not a military thing where they break you down and build you back up, but he breaks a player down in terms of, this is what you're still doing wrong. This is what we can do. And he can give them a picture of what they can be, but they have to work at it.
We've seen guys at Ohio State under Larry Johnson who were defensive ends who had this kind of size, pushing almost 270, 280 pounds, whatever he is, also go inside and create fits for the interior offensive linemen, the two guards in the center, by shooting gaps and blowing up plays and making plays and creating things for the outside guys or whatever. So it's entirely possible he could play 3 of the 4 spots, if not all 4 of the spots across the front, which just is such a mind bending type proposition for the defense. The quarterback comes to the line of scrimmage, and now the guy who's been lined up outside the tackle is now lined up over the center and is coming directly for his head. If he can get by the center, that's got to be a little bit of a scary prospect. So I think about him in general terms: powerful, athletic, nimble, can still add weight to his frame, has got experience both with his hand in the dirt and standing up, running, rushing off the edge. And from what our guys say, they've seen him drop into coverage as well. And, take running backs coming out of the backfield, these kind of things. So, or tight ends. He's got athleticism and ball skills, for goodness sake. So he put up some amazing numbers. I think his last year was kind of curtailed a little bit, obviously, by COVID. But I think it was something like 36 or 40 tackles for loss and 20 sacks over his sophomore and junior seasons when they played normal seasons. So to me, he's had the production, he's got the freakish ability, and now it's just a matter of putting it all together. I mean, you can be, and we say this all the time. I usually use it when I'm arguing about the old all they get is the scholar or the education thing. Like, no, that's not all they get. They get the expertise of Larry Johnson. They get the strength and conditioning work of Mickey Marotti. They get the nutrition work. They get the academics support. They get so many things across the board beyond just the ability to go to school for free and to live in a dorm for free. And if he avails himself of what Larry Johnson's going to give him, of what Mickey Marotti and his staff are going to teach him, and how to train and how to properly prepare to play a college football season, he'll be in the NFL as a top 20 pick probably in 3 years. But, that's on him. It's incumbent on him to take all those blessings he's been given and make the most out of them.
Andrew Hill was asking how he can possibly get his comment to the screen, so I posted that to the screen. But Andrew, we'll just let you know that if you catch me on a regular basis, which this is the first time I've seen your name, or catch our Ohio State show, I get to as many comments, questions as I possibly can, whether that be a solo show or we've got Stephen and Tony here. This just a little bit different. Wanted to get their expertise, obviously focusing on JTT. Steve, you got a few more minutes for us?
Yeah, I got about 5 minutes, and we're headed to a July 4th
nice
barbecue, so it's going to be fun with family and all that.
Travis Shaw is one of the top 5 defensive linemen in the country for 2022. He's a top 10 player rated overall by the 247 Sports Composite. I'm not going to limit the question to him, although he was brought up by a few different people. But just going now shifting from 2021, obviously JTT in the 21 class to 22, whether it be Travis Shaw or anyone else. Tony, any thoughts on what could be coming down the road here soon?
I think our insiders are expecting Travis Shaw to go elsewhere and aren't really looking into him. I don't know. He's so far off of my radar right now because I've just written him off as going somewhere else. And Ohio State has gotten some guys that they really like, defensive tackle from the camp scene. Steve, I think you saw Hero Kanu from Germany by way of California, by way of Germany. And they've got they're on the verge. They really like Chris McClellan from Oklahoma, defensive tackle, top 100-ish guy who is announcing eventually here. Defensive end out of, I think, Texas, Omari Abor, a 5-star guy that they're in on. So it's not like Larry Johnson's just going to take a break. I think they're in on 3 defensive tackles that they really, really like, and they'll sign another couple of defensive ends, and you just keep it moving. But Travis Shaw, I don't nothing from any of our insiders other than just shaking their head saying no, he's going to go somewhere else. And now if you can get him to visit, then we'll see.
Yeah, he's from Greensboro, North Carolina. Most of the pub on him has been about Clemson and North Carolina, those 2 schools. Ohio State would have to, swim upstream to get him. He's number 9 overall, I believe, in the composite, so that's pretty good. But, he would be a tremendous one. As Tony said, they had some guys at the camp who really stepped up and who Larry Johnson really, really liked. One of them was Brennan Vernon from up in Mentor, I believe, up in Northeast Ohio. And he has since verbal to Notre Dame. Now, he can't sign there for about 17 months. So maybe Larry, if let's say Marcus Freeman jumps off for a head coaching job either this December or the following December, maybe that doesn't look so good for and he could take over at Cincinnati next year if Luke Fickell finally gets. As I've said on our show any number of times, Luke Fickell would be making $7 million a year right now if they'd just gone by what they should have at the end of that Georgia game and not thrown a pass and stopped the clock or run out of bounds or whatever the heck that was, the terrible time management. But I would think Marcus Freeman would be next at Cincinnati as a head coach if that happens. So, don't rule that out. But there's a lot of guys out there, and really for Ohio State at this point, it's selecting, it's not recruiting. And if Ohio State offers, and not only that, if you're a defensive tackle and you have a chance to play alongside two great defensive ends, where the heck else would you want to be? Because they have to single block you now. They can't dedicate a guard and a tackle to you. They've got to put the tackle and the tight end on one of those ends and a tackle on the other. And that leaves the middle wide open, for a great defensive tackle to go to work. So to my way of thinking, I am of a mind that again, they're not going to have any problem finding guys that want to fill out the recruiting classes at Ohio State.
Just in terms of Christopher's question here, I keep going back to the 2017 class or the 2017 season where Chase Young was a freshman, Jonathan Cooper was a sophomore, and that team had Nick Bosa, Sam Hubbard, Jalen Holmes, and Tyquan Lewis. So those four played the bulk of the reps, played the bulk of the snaps at defensive end, rotating. Chase Young and Jonathan Cooper would get to come in. They'd sprinkle them in. Larry Johnson would sprinkle them in situations where they could succeed, which Chase Young did. I kind of see the same thing happening here where you've got an established four, and then Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau are the guys that are going to be sprinkled in. Now, the four this year aren't nearly as established as the four back in 2017. So there's going to be some room for Sawyer and Tuimoloau to make up some ground and maybe get into that too deep. But I totally expect him to play even without a spring. He's still going to have a fall camp. Nick Bosa didn't have a spring. He was coming back from an ACL tear. So he'll play. Just a matter of how much he plays is based on how well he does in camp and what Larry Johnson feels about his how much he can trust him.
Tony, Steve, I apologize. I've lost track of time. I see it's about 10 minutes after 5. Thanks so much for jumping on this link. I decided again, everybody, to do this last second when I saw JTT was committing and making that decision known. And these guys were gracious enough to jump on here and provide their expertise. Tony Gerdeman, Buckeye Scoop. Steve Hellwagon, Bucknuts, 247 Sports. These guys are the best. We're here talking Ohio State football with these two each Wednesday or whenever we can get it together each week. So hit that bell for the notifications to know when we're going live and catch these guys on their respective sites. Again, Tony at Buckeye Scoop, Steve at Bucknuts. Guys, I appreciate it. Great stuff.
Take care, guys.
See ya.
And I am going to be hanging out with all of you talking Ohio State football and college football in general, as I'll now have time to run through all the list of the comments and questions here in the live chat. And again, the phone lines, I will get the number to the bottom of the screen here at 860-499-3332 to take your comments and questions. And again, as I mentioned very quickly there at the end of the conversation with Steve and with Tony, we talk Ohio State football and would love to have a crowd like this in our Buckeye shows, because if you're this committed to this one commitment, which is soon to be a signee because it's not the 2022 class that we have to wait until December, like he is committing and signing, bam, and will be a Buckeye here momentarily, that we talk Ohio State football with Tony Gerdeman, Steve Hellwagon, and Kevin Noon from Rivals each and every week, typically on Wednesday. Now we've got to move that around because of schedules from time to time, but typically every Wednesday on our Ohio State channel. So some of you are watching on the main channel right now, some on the Oregon channel, some on the Ohio State channel, but on our Ohio State Buckeyes channel, Voice of College Football Ohio State, please join us there. Hit the bell for the notifications to know when we're going live with those two. And of course, Kevin Noon talking Ohio State football. And it's a great, great conversation, and their contribution is amazing. All right. I will get the Buckeyes to the top of the line here. My apologies. Most of you tolerated the Miami helmet behind me the entire time. So understand when I set up the shot, I don't know the way it's going to be configured depending on how many guests I have. So the U was prominently displayed despite Ohio State being front and center. Again, 860-499-3332. Let me get the number to the screen, and I will get to as many comments as I possibly can. I just returned from a bit of a trip for the past 5 to 6 days, and with everything going on around college football, we were going to go live at some point tonight anyway, and may go late night. We'll see. So hang in there with the notifications. Again, we'll be here on the main channel, most likely late night tonight and definitely Monday night. I've got a lot of college football to address, and check out our roster breakdowns with some of the best from 247 Sports and otherwise. We've posted Alabama, Georgia, and Clemson roster breakdowns, offense and defense, both sides, in-depth stuff, great stuff. For the deep dive on the roster breakdowns. Ohio State's coming soon, as well as Michigan and others. All right. I can only go so far back on the comments, so I'll go back as far as I can get, which would have been about 45 minutes ago. So we're in pretty good shape there. And again, want to appreciate David Knight and NBA fan. Thank you so much for your super chat contributions. Also understand, everyone, that you can contribute here at the Voice of College Football by going to PayPal, Venmo, or Cash App. Just search Mark Rogers TV, Mark Rogers TV at Venmo, PayPal, or Cash App. Make your contribution right there. Nate the Great's on the line. Good to see you, man. Another blow to the Big Blue. Go Blue in Michigan. John is telling us that absolute class rankings are rubbish. Should look at it as blocks or tiers. Block or tier one, probably top 10 teams on downward. So, John, that's a good point. Here's my thought, though. The composite rankings, the team rankings are not completely rubbish. I get your point. So somewhere in that top 3-4 range, there's a level there. There's been a level that's been established, and that's not necessarily just Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson. They have produced on the field at a certain tier to where there's a gap. But in recruiting, actually, Georgia's there. Actually, LSU is there most of the time. And those are the other two schools that can compete from a recruiting standpoint with the teams that we're talking about. If you really understand the metrics that go into the recruiting rankings, you have to understand that the class size has something to do with the recruiting rankings. So, for example, Ryan Day's first Ohio State recruiting class was only ranked 13th in the country, but the quality of that class was top 2 or 3 in the country. He only had, I believe, 14 signees because the way the scholarships worked out for Ryan Day in his first full recruiting cycle. So it looked like Ohio State had taken a tumble in recruiting if you just looked at the pure rankings. But if you took a little bit of another step to see that they only had 14 signees, I believe 14 was the number. That's why Ohio State was back in the pack that particular year. Now, we've also discussed this most notably with Cam Underwood from State of the U, who's a big recruiting guy and a Miami contributor, that if you look at the metrics that 247 in particular puts together, the composite, and look at the star rankings and how that factors into the mathematical equation, you can then do some math and figure out what is the difference between the number 1 class and the number 2 class. What's the difference between the number 1 class and the number 5 class? Because they could be like this. 1 could be here, 2 could be there, 3 could be there, 4 could be, or 1 could be here, 2 could be here, 3 could be there, 4 could be here. And if you put the math to it, then you start to understand that the difference, for example, And I'll use this comparison because we've got a couple of Notre Dame fans, of course, David and D-Rock Irish and others in the live chat, is that Ohio State recruiting in a top 3 level versus Notre Dame being in that 8 to 12 range means, I'm being general here, but it's pretty accurate. The difference there is about 4 to 5 players of an elite or near elite status, not necessarily a 5-star. Ohio State's getting 3 to 5 5-stars per class. So it's not quite to that level. There's only 35 to 45 stars in each class. But 4 stars, there are roughly about 350 to 400 4-stars. So if you look at the class rankings of individual players and go down the rankings, you're going to, whether your service is Rivals, I would advise you to go to the 247 Sports composite, because of course that's 247 Sports, it's Rivals, it's ESPN put together, and you get that cross-pollination and the combined rankings that's not biased in any one direction, that you'll see top 35 to 40 players are 5 stars. And then the rest of the top 300, so ESPN and 247 Sports will refer to their top 300, Rivals to a top 250. All those are 4-star players. So the 4-star goes beyond the top 300 into the 400 range, something in that range. So the difference between Ohio State with a top 3 class and Notre Dame with like a top 8 to 12 class, it's about 3 to 4 like premium players, 4-star, solid 4-star players that Ohio State gets, that Notre Dame is filling those spots with 3 stars. So there are tiers, and those tiers, from the standpoint of what we see on the field, have remained about the same for the past 7 or 8 years. Alabama may be on its own tier. We can have that discussion, that argument. But regardless, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and then you drop down to, on the field, Georgia, Oklahoma. LSU was an aberration in 2019, so I'm not going to include them. But basically, Oklahoma and Georgia. And then maybe if you want to be refined and specific about your tiers, you've got another drop to Notre Dame, it's tough to place anybody else there because some of the teams that would have been on that tier just recently had down 2020 seasons. I'm thinking Penn State and Michigan in particular. Oregon could be on that tier. But in terms of recruiting, it's Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia actually above Clemson. All right. Believe we covered some of this ground. And again, if you go to the ticker down below, we're at 860-499-3332. I'll be going live most likely later tonight. I can't promise, but most likely later tonight, and definitely on Monday evening, we'll go live to take your comments and questions about college football, and so much to talk about, and what I would like to address concerning recent news concerning Mark Richt, unfortunately, also name, image, and likeness. And there's a story that's out there, a controversial back and forth war of words in another sport that I would like to bring into the college football arena. Believe we've caught most of these recent comments from the last 45 minutes or so. Got Todd B chiming in. Good to see you, Todd. Always, you know that. Like with the team up north recruiting, Ohio State has signed 50 plus top 10 players in the past 4 to 5 classes. The team up north signed, I believe the number was 6 out of the top 100 players. Yeah. So, Todd, you've hit on something there that basically I lost track of during my soliloquy about tiers in recruiting. Is that, yes, that's what we're talking about right there, is these tiers are becoming very distinguished and separate. And even though you would think a top 10 class, a class that's ranked 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th is really good, and it is, competitively speaking, against most of the nation, that team should, with better coaching and game preparation and development of the players, should be able to compete as a 10th rated class against the number 2 class in the country. You're hitting on something right there, Todd, that shows us how much of a drop there is between being one of those top 3 in the nation and then being in that lower portion of the top 10. That's right there. I don't have the specific numbers, but Todd does a nice job of hitting on Ohio State's top 100 players in the past 4 to 5 classes versus Michigan. In Michigan, those classes for Jim Harbaugh have been rated anywhere between 8 and 15, which, again, on the surface, you would think with development and game preparation that you could take a roster that is compiled of top 8 to 15 classes, and then you would be able to compete with top 3 classes in the nation with a little bit of work and sweat equity and game planning, coaching. But that's a huge difference. JG, for 2021, Ohio State ended up with 6 5-stars and 13 4-stars, and Notre Dame had no 5-stars and 12 4-stars. So you're talking about, if we're going to assume the same number of signees in the 2021 class, and it's probably within 2 or 3, each class is different, that Ohio State had 21 blue chip players and Notre Dame 12. And Ohio State had even the top end of those blue chip selections as 5-stars. And the difference between a 5-star and a 4-star in total is significant. There have been reviews of NFL players and NFL rosters and where those players were signed and where they ranked in the recruiting rankings. And you can't go with the whole sheer numbers because there's not going to be that many 5-stars to evaluate. So the number of 5-stars in the NFL is small because there just aren't many of them. As I said a few minutes ago, there's typically 35 to 45 stars, and there's over 400 4-stars. So there's going to be more 4-stars in the NFL than 5-stars because there's just more of them. But if you look at the percentage, this really tells you the percentage of 5-stars that make the NFL versus the percentage of 4-stars versus the percentage of 3-stars, it just shoots up like a hockey stick. I don't know the percentages off the top of my head. If 80% of the 5-stars make the NFL and 30% of the 4-star, whatever the percentage is, it's not even close. The recruiting rankings are extremely accurate. We can sit here all day and we can point out specific programs and particular players that did not live up to their recruiting rankings, or players that came out of nowhere as 2-stars and became legit impact players. Yes, but we're looking over the course of thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of players over the course of years and years and years and years. Of course, you're going to have aberrations. They're all over the place. But in total, the recruiting rankings are extremely accurate. Extremely accurate. Texas is just screwing up, and Wisconsin is just smart. So those are aberrations. Texas brings in top 5 to 10 talent and coaches it to top 40 teams, to a bunch of 7 and 5 kind of teams. Wisconsin takes top 40 classes, and they're recruiting better now. Paul Chryst just brought in the best Wisconsin recruiting class in 2021 ever. So that might be scary. Wisconsin brought in like the 17th or 18th recruited top class in the country. But of course, Wisconsin has typically brought in top 40 classes and turned them into top 10 to 15 teams. So they're the aberrations. Everybody else is pretty much in line. You also have to take into consideration in the SEC, the competition that they have to play on the field brings down the results of highly recruited classes. Case in point is South Carolina. Even under Will Muschamp, South Carolina would bring in top 15 to 20 recruiting classes. Well, they didn't finish in the top 15 to 20 in the country. Were they that good? No, they weren't a top 15 to 20 team, but if they had played in a different conference against different competition, yes, South Carolina's record would have been more in line with their recruiting classes, but they have to play a tougher schedule. So when, when 11 or 12 of the top of the SEC teams, 11 of 12 of the top SEC teams are in the top 25 in the recruiting rankings, well, then they all have to play each other and they can't all win the game. So there are going to be more underachievers in the SEC because they have to play an SEC schedule. NH, thank you so much for the super chat contribution, NH. Appreciate that. Sending your channel a 5-star for JTT. Big day for the Buckeyes. James Joseph, I agree with you. If I'm reading these comments accurately from you about who gets the best players and then who wins all the football games, it is boring. I love college football. Once the games come on Saturday, I am the happiest guy on the planet because the product on the field is amazing. The games are amazing. What's kind of disturbing and also interesting about it, though, if you really track the best games in college football, the most exciting games, they're usually the games that don't matter toward a national championship. Usually. Now, Ohio State will play the thriller against Penn State on occasion, and Alabama will be tested by a Georgia in the SEC championship game in 2018, for example, and Clemson will be tested on occasion by a Texas A&M on the road as they were a few years ago. That's an example. But I had to go to 3 different programs, to 3 separate games going back 4 years to gain some examples. The best games in college football week to week, unfortunately, are played by the non-national championship contenders. Let's go back 2 years because the pandemic screwed things up in 2020. But if we went back to 2019 and we went through week 1, week 2, week 3, and picked out the best, just the most exciting games, regardless of the team's records. Not necessarily the biggest games, just the most entertaining games in college football. If we looked at those week to week, they're coming from non-national championship contenders. Those are the best games. The Wisconsin-Iowa games, the Texas A&M, Mississippi State games. I'm just throwing games out there. LSU, Texas A&M a couple years ago, that 7 overtime, 74-72. epic clash meant nothing toward a national championship. Roberto, good to see you as well. You know who else gets top talent and can't develop it? Michigan, to a certain extent. We just outlined, we just took the last 15 or 20 minutes, Roberto, to explain the difference between Ohio State talent and Michigan talent. Decided difference. But yes, Ohio State and a few others are also taking that top-notch talent and developing it and game planning well and winning games. Winning almost all their games, 90-some% of their games. Urban Meyer won 91% of his games, and now Ryan Day's winning more than 91% of his games. And of course, Nick Saban is. Nick Saban's got the best record in the country, going back to the time that he first won big at Alabama, his second season in 2008. And Urban Meyer was right there with him in terms of winning percentage, not championships, winning percentage. Dabo Swinney, of course, 90% plus. Michigan's not recruiting. So the difference between Ohio State and Michigan is both. It's recruiting, it's talent on the roster, but it's also the development of the talent and the game planning. And the area in which we can back up the development argument is in the NFL, where we see players go to Michigan. Rashawn Gary would be a good example. And they're signing NFL contracts, but they're not becoming stars in college like they were projected to be as 5 stars. They're going to Michigan using their natural abilities, being coached a bit. I'm not going to discredit the entire coaching staff as being incompetent, but they are not, their potential is not being maxed out. And so that they're being coached, they're developing to a certain extent as players to become decent collegiate players, good players with a lot of talent. Then they get drafted and they move on to the NFL, where we just cited in the conversation about JT Tuimoloau, Chase Young, Nick Bosa, Joey Bosa in particular as being the 3 prime examples in the last 6 to 7 years of great talent being developed and coached to the standard of great NFL player now. So it's the talent, but it's also the development of the talent. Michigan does not have the talent Ohio State does. For those people that came to me and said, well, in 2021, no, it was the 2020 draft that Michigan had just as many players taken as Ohio State, 10 versus 10. Well, there's a huge difference between having players drafted in the 5th and 6th round. All of Michigan's players were drafted in the last 2 rounds of the draft. Almost all of Ohio State's players, and I'm talking the 2020 draft, were drafted at the top end of the draft, including, of course, 2 of the top 3 players in the draft. Huge difference. NH, will an elite defensive line help our suspect secondary? Well, absolutely. They could make that suspect secondary if there's improvement by the secondary. Even if there's not improvement by the secondary and they play exactly the same as they did last year, if Ohio State's defensive line goes from being very good, as they were in 2020, to being elite, best, or near best in the nation. Ohio State put pressure on the quarterback last year, but they were on so many occasions just a half a step slow. Didn't quite get there. And if they turn those 4, 5, 6 times a game in which they are almost at the quarterback, have the hand in the face of the quarterback, but the quarterback still makes a play, still gets the ball downfield, or at least gets rid of the football instead of taking a 10-yard sack, Ohio State, that just completely changes the game, changes down in distance. And obviously the secondary If the quarterback's on his back with a football in his hand, I could be in the secondary, and that's a sack, and my dude's 22 yards open, but it didn't matter. If that quarterback is on his back and he was able to release the ball, but under severe duress, and my dude that I'm covering is still 22 yards open, but the ball didn't get anywhere near him because it was off target, we're still good. The secondary still looked like garbage. The secondary still didn't do its job, but the bottom line was it was a successful play for the defense. Now, there are going to be times the defensive line can't get there every play, and the defensive line can get there sometimes and do its job and cause duress, but the quarterback either breaks contain or delivers the football anyway, and that's where the secondary's got to be better. But if you look at a span of 10 plays, let's say where the defensive line used to be or let's say 100 plays, and the defensive line in 2020 was effective 65 out of 100. If that gets increased to 80 out of 100, that's 15 plays that the secondary didn't have to account for itself. Yes, those two things go hand in hand. This Ohio State secondary could play just as poorly as it did last year in 2021, and they'll just flat out be more successful and look better if the defensive line's as good as we believe it's going to be. Now, if you combine that, what could get scary and really turn into successful defensive play is if the defensive line goes from, again, over the course of 100 plays being effective 65% of the time to 80% of the time, but actually the defensive backs improve. And I'm not talking about going from bad to elite, but bad to marginal, decent. It's difficult to judge because Ohio State's stacked with so much talent, but to evaluate how bad the secondary play was last year, let's say out of 65 Power 5 teams, if we could just look at the secondary play, let's say they were, for as bad as they were still a top half of the nation Power 5 secondary. So let's say they were 30th best. If they can raise that to 20, 18, 16, something in that range, and then the defensive line kicks in, now this is where the progress is made, and made against the better teams. That's where the progress has to be made. Beating up on Maryland and Rutgers and beating them 55-7 instead of 55-21 because your defense is better is nice, that it's a more dominating performance, but that's not what is going to matter here. It's Penn State, and I'll say it, people are going to laugh. Michigan could still be a competitive game, but it's going to be against Penn State. It's going to be against Oregon, of course. Penn State, Oregon, and I'm trying to think of another possible test out there on the road. They've got Nebraska, Minnesota. That could possibly be the one. Week 1, Thursday night. CJ Stroud, first start. Minnesota, Nebraska. Who's the other Big Ten Western team that they play? They don't play Iowa. And they don't play Wisconsin. So the tests are going to be Oregon and Penn State for sure. And maybe Michigan. Guess it's only been 2 blowouts in a row. It's only been 2018 and 19. So thank you so much for letting everyone know and encouraging them to hit the like button. They've got Iowa this year. Do they? Why am I not remembering Ohio State's schedule? Which reminds me, I may just start carving up schedules. How about that? You guys good with that? I start releasing schedule previews. I usually do that months and months ago. Why would I have forgotten that they've got Iowa on the schedule? At Minnesota, Oregon, Tulsa, Akron, at Rutgers, Maryland, bye week at Indiana, of course. I'm forgetting about the Hoosiers, Penn State at Nebraska, Purdue, Michigan State at Michigan. No, there's no Iowa. It's Purdue at home. It's Minnesota. Yes, Minnesota, Purdue, and Nebraska, with Nebraska and Minnesota on the road. Those are the Big Ten Western Division games for the Buckeyes. All right. All right, folks. It's been great to see everybody here at the Voice of College Football as we went live. And that's our aim. That's our goal. That's our mission. Best discussion, debate, and analysis of college football here, of course, but also to come live with discussion with you as many times as possible when we've got breaking news. So we do that each and every time we possibly can. Come on here live with breaking news to discuss it with you. We will see you soon. Hit the bell for the notifications once you subscribe. That's key to tracking our live streams because we don't have a set schedule right now. But I may be here later tonight. There's a number of college football topics I'd like to address, but definitely Monday night right here on the main channel. Then we've got our array of shows here on the various team channels. And for those of you joining us maybe for a first time or you've only sampled a few videos, we've got 22 team channels. And in particular, we've got Oklahoma, Nebraska, Florida State, Miami, and Ohio State live shows each week. So every Tuesday nights, it's Nebraska live on the Nebraska channel at 8 Eastern. It's Ohio State and Florida State live on those respective team channels. Wednesday at 2 and at 6 Eastern. It's Miami live at 5 and 7 on the Miami channel every Thursday, 5 and 7, and Oklahoma live at 2:30 Eastern on the OU channel. Appreciate everybody being here. Good to see you, Sue and Cheryl. Thanks for your support. Everybody else as well. Once again, thank you, NBA fan and David Knight, for your contributions, as well as the recent super chat that came in from, lest I forget, who was that? That was our guy, NH, right here at the Voice of College Football. We will see you soon.